Welcome, everybody. It is a bad hair day. We were laughing in the green room. Tom was saying, I never know what your hair is going to look like in videos. And we had a minor emergency this morning. So yeah, it's a bad hair day. And I get to do what all the guys do and put on a baseball cap and everything is okay. So enough about that. I want to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Tom Williams. Is the author of The Seller's Challenge and Buyer-Centered Selling. I should know how to say that. And I love it. He was on one of our lives and we started chatting and we just got to know each other a little bit, and you'll get to know a lot more about him too here shortly. But like us at Vengreso, it's all about the buyer-centered buyer and buyer-centered selling. And if you don't know what that means, stay on the live because you'll find out shortly. With Vengreso, we are always talking about making your profiles buyer-centric. It needs to be focused on your buyer, not so much on who you are. And so I'm super excited to take it to a whole new level with buyer-centered selling with Mr. Tom Williams. So Andre, and it's Andre's last day. I'm so sad. Andre, let's bring Tom up to the, hello, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. Pleasure.
Excellent.
To be here.
We love having you. And I love your office. We had a little discussion. Should we do the green screen or not? But no, you got like the coolest office in the world. Tell us a little bit about it. Then we'll jump into the show.
Well, this is like a baseball museum is the primary theme, Viv. But if I tilted the screen up, you'd see that I have a train track that goes all the way around the entire office, and then I have a separate track where there's a little bumper car that goes up and down. He goes back and forth, and I have the 7 dwarfs over here displayed. I have a Batmobile made out of Legos. It's about 2.5 to 3 feet long. And then I have about 26 ducks in a row up here to make sure I keep my ducks in a row. So it's kind of a fun office.
And how often do you have, like, how many ducks in a row? 27 ducks in a row.
Yeah. Occasionally a duck drops, that's what happens. Yeah.
Sometimes we drop the ducks. Exactly.
I drop a duck. That's exactly right.
Well, I love having you on the show. We've got a bunch of people calling in. Let us know in chat, where are you calling in from today? Would love to see you. And of course, if you've got any questions for Tom, Andre is monitoring all our feeds. So, whether you're coming to us from Periscope or Facebook or LinkedIn, what else do we have? I think that's it, right? Or YouTube. If you're coming to us from any of those, just drop any questions into the feed and we'll make sure to get them answered for you. So my first question for you, Tom, is can you explain buyer-centered selling? Like, shouldn't we all be doing that anyway? Or what is buyer-centered selling?
Well, I think the way I would describe it, Viv, is that, when you become buyer-centered, think of it as both of a mindset as well as a strategy that's really focused on helping the prospective buyer change from their current state to an improved business outcome through collaborative action. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, has that changed? Like with the pandemic and everything going on, is it more so? Is it less so? Are people more aware of the need to do this, less aware? What are you seeing?
Well, I think, it's interesting. If you start to think about I don't know that so much the pandemic has driven it as much as it's helped accelerate it. But there's been a phenomenal number of trends that have been occurring over the last, 5 to 8, 10 years. And and I think the trends really are what's driving this thing. And it's pretty interesting. We get into what those are.
Yeah. So let's talk about, all my technology is going weird right now. So let's talk about that. What does that look like? How has B2B selling changed? What are those? What are these different profiles?
Well, I'll give you several. We'll start with the first one that's probably the most obvious, right? And that is the increased buyer knowledge. And here's an interesting fact for you: 74% of B2B buyers did more than half their research online before buying offline. Okay. Second great trend is that there's a greater number of buyers. And what happens is Gartner's now reporting it's over 9 people in a B2B complex B2B sale.
Right.
Think of the ramifications of that for sellers. Your sales cycle is now going to get longer, getting longer because of the number of people.
Yeah.
Access to people is decreasing because of the remoteness and the difficulty of having more people involved.
Yeah. Risk
is increasing, and buyer dysfunction is probably increasing as well.
Yeah.
We're seeing that as well. A third trend, is formation of buying committees. What we're seeing is this large group of people, the 9 people, now being formed as a buying committee. And the problems for sellers is how are they going to make a decision? Yeah. And we're seeing more and more that decisions are going to consensus as opposed to, one person being a final yes. And when you try to achieve a consensus, there's 3 areas that are important, right? First is, do I want to change? Do we really want to make a change from what we're doing today? The second one is around the solution requirements. What should those requirements be? And how do we make sure that everybody's needs are satisfied? And then third, who's the vendor we're going to select?
Yeah.
So that's the third change, right?
Exactly. No. And, and as consumers, we're used to doing our research online, and that's kind of like a given. I mean, even going out to dinner, we're on Yelp, right? But I don't think I don't know that a lot of people took that consideration to B2B sell or B2B buying. You're absolutely right. So 74%. Before the internet, what were buyers doing? How were they getting informed? And before buyer committees, what were they doing? How has that changed?
Well, I think before the internet, the sales rep was the purveyor of information, right? I mean, I can remember when I was in a situation where I was doing a lot of buying. The sales rep, you look forward to them coming in because they would give you literature, they'd give you testimonials, they'd give you, all types of literature that will allow you case studies that will allow you to become more educated. Today, everybody does that all up front and online.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I like what you said just then, because, before the internet, our sellers, in most cases, maybe not when buying cars, but in most cases, were the trusted advisor, especially for the B2B role, right? Yep. They, like you said, they came in with the information, they answered your questions. And let's face it, they usually brought snacks or drinks or, the old days. And now, like you said, everything's online. So how has that made things more difficult? I mean, obviously, you got to convince 9 people, not just one person. You've got to convince 9 people of 3 different things, not just one thing. Like what kind of tools or what strategies can our B2B sellers utilize in order to combat these new changes?
Well, I'll tell you, there's several that we use routinely, and we found to have very, very high success rate. One is helping people buy, and what I mean by that is helping people understand the buyer journey as opposed to your traditional sales process, right? Yeah. Sales process is all focused on the things that you or I do as a seller. That has nothing to do with the buyer. I mean, you can put in exit criteria and all that kind of stuff, but what you're really looking for is how does the buyer buy? What are the steps that they walk through? So that's the first thing. I think help them walk through that, because if you think about the average buyer, many times they've never bought your product or service before. They think about technology. They might buy it every 7 to 10 years or capital equipment. They've never bought it before. And so they crave and they want somebody that sells differently, and they can walk them through what does that process look like. The second thing that we do is we use a outcome enablement plan, and all that is a collaboration or a joint plan that's developed between the buyer and the seller, to help them explore, together the feasibility of a business relationship. Some people call it a mutual action plan or collaboration plan, other things. We prefer the term outcome enablement plan because it's really what the customer, it's focused on the customer, it's focused on the buyer. And I think the third thing is helping the customer build consensus. Oftentimes they don't know how to do that. And so they need somebody, a collaborative seller that can help them walk through what that process looks like.
I love the idea outcome enablement plan. So when do you bring that into the conversation? Like, is it the first time you connect? Is it once you've already started the conversation? When do you bring this in, and what does it look? I don't want you, like, don't give away all the secrets, because we want people to hire you. But when do you launch it, and what does it look like?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a hotly debated topic amongst the experts, and some of the companies have created a software program around that type of tool. We prefer to use it at the very beginning of the sale. Once I've talked to a buyer, so let's assume that you're the buyer, and I've talked to you, and I've found out, exactly that, where your current state is, where you want to go to, what's the cost of inaction of doing nothing. And that you're really the owner of the problem, right? You own the problem, and this is an organizational priority. Then I'm going to introduce the outcome enablement plan, because what that really does is it defines all of the milestones for you that you're going to need to go and use to buy, right? Yeah. And underneath that, we then put down and decide what are the key activities that I'll need to do and you'll need to do. And the key to this thing, and where the magic occurs, Viv, is I tell customers, I'm going to help you develop this plan. And even if you don't work with me or decide to buy from me, this plan is going to be useful for you with whoever you choose. That's selling differently, and that resonates with buyers. In 7 years of using that tool, I've never had someone tell me I don't want to develop that plan with you.
Yeah. I can't imagine anyone doing that. And you brought up, something really important. We talk about ROI all the time in sales, obviously, but COI, the cost of inaction. And, that's really, really important, because with everything going on and all the changes, a lot of people are just frozen, right? They're frozen in inaction, and that's costing them, it's costing their sales team, it's costing their company a lot of money, a lot of time, potentially employees. So I love the idea that you have this action plan that you can work with them on. And like you said, hopefully they hire you to go to the next step, but if not, is that something?
They've got a great plan that they can use with whatever vendor they want to work with, and it's distinguished us as a seller in a different way, and they'll look for another way to do business with us.
I love that. What would you suggest to other sellers? Like, how do they learn more about this? How do they start implementing this themselves? They just need to come to you.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny you asked that, because we're in the last throes of redesigning our website, and it should be up any day. We thought it might be up yesterday or the day before, but our provider that hosts it is having trouble getting it operational. But so it should be operational any day, and there'll be a downloadable PDF ebook on the outcome enablement plan, and then we're also going to share the plan, the actual plan that we use, is the form that we use, so people will be able to use it.
Wow, that is awesome, Andre. If we've got, I know it's not quite ready yet, but let's get the website up there if we can for people to look at. So when it's ready, today, tomorrow, next week, that they can get that, because that's huge. I think that's really, really important. As far as creating that new relationship with the buyer. Now, obviously, what we do at Vengreso, it's the first step, other than changing your mindset, which I will say the pandemic kind of helped us with that, because everyone's like, okay, I got to do virtual selling now. I'm a B2B company. I might as well use LinkedIn. So our second step, of course, is creating that strong brand, creating that profile. And this is very much a big part of what you do too. So how can buyer-centered sellers get their message across in their LinkedIn profiles? We have our way of doing it, but what do you suggest to people?
Well, yeah, it's funny you're even asking me the question, because you're the one who wrote the book on it. I mean, if anybody's the authority, it's you, right? So yeah. So I think there's a couple of ways. I probably should have read the book before I said this, right? But no, here's what I would suggest. A couple things. Use words like help buyers buy. Help buyers achieve measurable outcomes. Use words like buyer-centered. I sell differently by helping buyers in the following ways. In your profile or even in your achievements, you can do things like, I want you to put down, I think it's good to put down things like you made President's Club, X number of years, revenue achievement, but talk about how you did it. Is talk about help 25 customers, achieve a measurable ROI of X, or facilitated consensus of the buying process, with X number of customers, use an outcome enablement plan, to assist buyers. 100% agreed that it benefited their purchase. Make it actionable, in some way that shows that you're really a different type of seller.
I love that you said that, because we're always like, oh my God, stop saying like President's Club for 25 years, blah. But you made a really good point. You absolutely probably should add that, but in the achievements area. That should not be in your headline. That should not be the first thing that people read in the about section. But not only can you add it later on, but I love that the action positioning in it. Okay, yes, I achieved President's Club, but here's how and here's why. So it's not about you achieving President's Club. It's about how you helped other people, i.e. how you can help them as well. So I love that. See, we can learn something too.
Well, I'll tell you what it plays well into, another trend that we didn't talk about was that, the impact of social selling. On B2B selling, 75% now are using social media to make a purchase decision. Right. And, and the other thing that I think is very interesting as a trend is a generational shift. 42% of B2B buyers are under 40. Yeah. They all grew up, Viv, with technology. And so the thing you and I look at, like with a phone, that's like an appendage to those folks.
100%.
And that appendage is a gateway to information through the internet and through social media. And they get information pushed to them, and they can go Google it and find information. So I think all of those play into this changing trend, which leads into, different types of messaging for different types of people, right? You've got to have a different type of message for a 25-year-old than you do for a 60-year-old. And
I love that you bring that up, because I know better. We work with B2B sellers every single day. And most of them are 40 or younger, but I don't know why. In my head, I still see the B2B buyer looking, not that I'm not saying you don't look 40, Tom, but I see the B2B buyer looking more like you, male and over 40 years old. But you're 100% right. Most B2B buyers are younger. And it's interesting because, and I mentioned this probably on every live, but McKinsey came out with an article at the end of last year saying that 85%, it's either 80 or 85% of B2B buyers prefer doing things the way we're doing them now. They don't want to go back to the old way of doing things. So B2B sellers just, it's like, guess what? You have to learn social selling techniques. You have to learn how to use LinkedIn effectively. You have to learn how to use Zoom and turn the camera on. You've got to learn how to sell with video if you're not going to be doing as many face-to-face conferences, trade shows, etc. Because I love what you said, that the B2B buyer, they're younger, they're attached to their phones. They're absorbing information differently than, folks our age and older. So what are some of the things that you've shifted, knowing that B2B buyer is a little bit younger, is a lot more tech savvy? What have you shifted in your own engagement?
I think there's a variety of things that we've done. One is I think you sell with insights that educate. Yeah, I think is one, right? I think another one is as we mentioned earlier, helping customers buy, helping the buyer. Yeah. I think the other one is defining the buyer's ecosystem, and identifying a mobilizer, a champion, whatever term that you want to use. I think those are things that that you have to do. Yeah. And one that nobody talks about is identify and mitigate risk. That's a really important one that, because every buying decision involves some type of change, which involves some type of risk. And I hear consistently from sellers, I don't want to identify that. I'm hoping it doesn't crop up in the sale. And guess what? It does crop up. You're only meeting with the buyers about 17% of the time.
Right.
The rest of the time, they're talking amongst themselves.
Exactly.
So, so the question I was asked is, who's selling for you when you're not there? Number one. And number two, is if you're not identifying and mitigating this up front, your deal is probably going to go to status quo, or you're going to go to loss column.
Yeah. 100. Oh my God. I love that you said that. We just did another deal, and one of our sales guys, what we discovered, but having that strong coach within the organization is absolutely key. So yes, you've got a whole buying committee, but if you can get one coach, if you can get one advocate within within the company you're trying to infiltrate, it's going to go a lot further, to your point, especially that the 80, I can't do math, 83% of the time that they're not thinking about you. They're not engaging with you. Who is there helping you out? So now we're going to go down a rabbit hole. How do you find that advocate? How do you find that coach? How do you create that relationship? What are some of the things that you personally have done, or that you coach your sellers into doing?
Well, I think you've got to look at, and define the different types of criteria, that make up that person, because there's we throw around the terms a lot around coach, champion, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly.
To be equal. And really there's depending upon, or a mobilizer, and depending upon who you talk to, those terms change. Yeah. I look for somebody that really wants to be a mobilizer. To me, is somebody who really wants to change, somebody that sees the difference and the benefit of getting away from the status quo and doing something else.
Yeah.
Someone who's got credibility and influence within the account, within the opportunity, within that buying opportunity, that they can mobilize other people and they can create consensus.
Yes.
I think the other thing is they've got to have access to, if there is an economic buyer, they have to have access to that individual, right? You need to have somebody that can sell on your behalf, or at least has high credibility that the economic buyer will then sign off on whatever they recommend.
Yeah. And I think you bring up, again, some good points. I think a lot of people think of the coach or their advocate as being like the key seller or the key buyer. And it doesn't have to be the person who's holding the purse strings, but it has to be the person who understands what's going on and has influence over the buying committee. How do you source that person? How do you find that actual person? Because it's easy to go, okay, CFO, they've got control of the purse strings, or CEO, she has control of the purse strings. But how do you find that person who might be on the buying committee, who's got the influence to persuade the other folks to go for your product or your service?
I think I think they come in different flavors. A lot of times it's the person who's very quiet, and other times it's the individual who's asking a ton of questions. I think what you've got to do is have a deep, rich conversations.
Yeah.
Deep, rich conversations that with each of those people, and find out, how do they see your solution? How do they see making a change? And are they willing to exert their opinion, either in a committee fashion, or are they willing to go to the economic buyer if that's the final yes? If there is a final yes, an economic buying influence, are they willing to go in and make that recommendation?
Yeah. Now, how do you actually get those conversations started? What are some of the techniques you use to get those conversations started? Because a lot of times, getting to hello is the hard part for some sellers. Yeah, and for some buyers.
I think if you've really got a mobilizer that wants your solution, what's going to happen is they're going to start to ask you questions about, how do we make this happen? Or here's the next step that I think we should do. you're going to see words like we, it's going to be, in other words, it's going to be collaborative. They're going to want to have you win the deal because of the language that they're using. So they're going to be I think they're going to be outgoing in that sense, that they're going to ask you those types of questions. Those are the types of things that I look for. I also look for, I look for somebody that you give them a task to do and they go do it.
Yeah.
Because they know it's moving the sale forward, and they look at it jointly. That we're tied to the hip, that the two of us are working together.
Yeah.
But again, if you're doing this with an outcome enablement plan, your coaches or your mobilizers, they surface very quickly because they see the need for change, because it's magnified. The first thing we put up at the top is, here's the cost of inaction. So they see this is a bona fide project that they want to work on. They see the value of it from their perspective, not your perspective. And all of a sudden they take the initiative to start getting other people to be involved. Right? They identify those other stakeholders that are affected by the change. They bring them to the meetings. They get you access. They eliminate the ghosting that goes on. They eliminate the I can't get past the gatekeeper nonsense.
Right.
They all want you to be successful. This plan is so powerful, Viv, because it does all those things, and it automatically helps you identify a coach.
That's awesome. So the outcome enablement plan will be available as a PDF on your website shortly, once all the tech stuff. And we had your website up a little bit earlier. I hope that was the right one. Andre, can you pop that one back up again?
Yeah, that's
She's on it. That's the right one. Okay, so make sure. And we put.
We just got to make sure that we get it updated so that it's got all the current stuff on it.
Exactly. And for those of you who are listening in from wherever you're listening in, Andre has popped that link into the different timelines, into the different comment sections too. So you don't even have to type it in. You can just click on it, which is way easier than typing stuff in. Right. So we got 3 more minutes left. What else should our what else should our sellers know in order to create better relationships with their buyers?
Oh, let me think about that one. I think the other thing is maybe I'll throw this one out. Flexibility in how they can acquire your product or service.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're seeing in the B2B side with Netflix and Amazon is the propensity to subscribe, right?
Yeah.
Do the subscription model as opposed to
purchase. Yep.
And it's interesting. There's a company called Siemens Healthineers.
Oh, we know Siemens. Yay, guys.
All right.
And we love our Siemens.
They recently did a deal with, I want to call it Wake Med Health and Hospitals. Mm-hmm. And what they're going to do is add robotic initiatives, advanced imaging, artificial intelligence, people, as well as our staffing, as well as training for them in return for a fixed unitary payment. And it's a 10-year deal. So think about the ramifications of that. If you're selling it against people, you're locked out of that healthcare system for the next 10 years, and that's right. The functional department, right?
That's awesome.
That's a massive change. And where's that emanating from? It's coming from the B2C side. So I think one of the things that I always tell B2B buyers is looking around in your environment. Think about what's happening in your environment, and ask the question: can we do that here? Can we be different?
I love that you just said that, because we literally just switched over to a subscription model. And we're throwing everything in the kitchen sink. So before we used to selling with LinkedIn, selling with Sales Navigator, selling with video. And now we've got the Modern Sales Mastery Program. It's a minimum of a 2-year subscription. But now we've got, so we lock our buyers in, but they don't need to go anywhere else, because we're going to teach them everything they need to know about social selling, truly for whatever platform they want to be on, which is a lot better for them, because, they're going to get a lot more out of Modern Sales Mastery, and it's better for us because we've got, at least a 2-year deal out of it. So we can work our budget a little bit better.
Well, I love the subscription model, Viv, because I tell you, when I was running a separate sales and marketing organization years ago, on December 31st, when our fiscal year ended, we'll say we've ended with 100 million as an average. On January 1st, we started over at 0.
Right.
You know,
I
it's a,
know.
what is it, you know, and I got to get to 120 million because the board wants 20% growth, right? Now,
Exactly.
the subscription model on January 1st, you start at 100 million and you got to get to 120.
Yeah,
I'd much rather do that than
exactly.
from a growth point of view. So, and then
100%.
think about the multiple you can sell at, you know, when you do sell a company. I mean, it's a much better model.
Yeah, I think so too. And, you know, for me, I was kind of resistant to the subscription model. I think the first time it really hit me was with my Microsoft Office. I went from, okay, I'm going to send $69 or 79 or 129 or whatever it was, and it's good for 4 or 5 years. And then I'll just buy another one. But now it's like,
Right.
I have no idea what I'm paying every year, or every month. But you get all the updates, you get everything, and you get used to it. And it's not such a hard pill because you're paying monthly. And I think that the subscription, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think the subscription solution is it has so many positive things to think about. So yeah, if you're selling a product or a service, folks, think about, you know, how you can turn that into a subscription and continue to make that money, you know, whether it's makeup, right? Or sales training, or, you know, books. Like, how can you turn it into a subscription? I love that. All right.
Well, you know,
Go ahead.
what Siemens has done in a nutshell is let the buyer buy the way they want to.
Yes,
If
exactly.
you want to do an outright purchase, we'll do that. If you want to
Yeah.
lease, we'll do that. You want to do a per use basis, we'll do that. If you want to do another type of deal, we'll do that. It's creative. It's letting the buyer buy the way they want, and that's where I think we need to be going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, folks, if you haven't done so yet, check out Tom's website, check out his books. We've got the Sellers Challenge and Buyer-Centered Selling. Keep an eye on that website too, because remember, there's going to be some really good stuff on there that you can download for free. Of course, if you want to work with Tom, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Reach out through LinkedIn, or my cell phone is 951-515-8159. I always love to talk to people.
I love it. If you're on LinkedIn right now, you'll obviously see Tom in the feed, so you can reach out to him. I'm going to go ahead, Andre, and pop Tom's link into private chat if you can get it on for the rest of us to see. There we go. So yeah, make sure to reach out to Tom. Thank you so much for being here today. That was great.
Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. You're a lot of fun to talk to.
Even on a bad hair day.
Yeah, I know. I thought the hair was fine before you put the cap on.
Thanks so much. And everyone, Andre, who's in the back, if you want to come up forward, or if you want to stay back there, that's fine. Andre, my wonderful producer, love her so much, is leaving us. She is heading to Barcelona in order to pursue her education. I expect to see some really good films coming out from Barcelona and from you, Andre. Thank you so much for all you've helped us with. And thank you, Tom. And thank you, everyone who has been on our lives. We'll see you in a few weeks without Andre. So we'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks so much, Tom.
All right.
All right, everyone.